Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the council chambers for the Public Works Committee meeting. My name is Ryan Austin. I am the Public Works Chairperson. We'll go around the room quick and have everybody introduce themselves, starting with Paul.
Paul Vollert, Public Works Superintendent.
Matt Zacher, Alderman, District 3.
Patrick Delaney, Alderman, District 7.
Dave Emke, District 8.
Shane Blazer, Mayor.
Nick Dooms, Design Engineer.
Thank you. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Item number 2, review the proposed mailbox replacement policy. Is that you, Paul?
Okay, thank you. This is just a carry on from our last meeting. I created it as a separate referral item just because in reviewing it, obviously it's not just strictly snowplow operations that may damage mailboxes. Did some research on some other surrounding communities and things like that. And in your packet, there is 2 options. First option is simply just for us to determine if the mailbox was installed properly. Then if it was, and we in fact hit it, damaged it with either a snowplow, sweeper, or whatever, we could then replace it with either a wood post metal box or the type that you see in the hardware store where it's a Rubbermaid or plastic box that goes over the top of the 4x4. If that wasn't appropriate for the property owner, they could request reimbursement up to, and I just used an arbitrary number of $100. You know, I know we were throwing different numbers out there before, and so that can be adjusted. The person would obviously have to turn into a receipt, and then we would compensate them for that $100. Option 2 is to strictly, once again, make sure that the mailbox was installed properly. If it was, and we did in fact hit it, we would do nothing except for possibly install a temporary mailbox for them for the winter months. And then again, they would turn in receipts, and then we would reimburse them for, $100, and they would fix it on their own. So neighboring communities, City of Marshfield, they replace it with a wood post and metal box. City of Stevens Point replaces it. They purchase, I think they said like 25 of the Rubbermaid box and posts in the beginning of the year, and then they replace them throughout the year. And then Wood County Highway just does a stipend of $50. And then the City of Wausau is the one that does a stipend of $75. So it's kind of all over the place. To some extent, I would not have an issue with either one. Sometimes it's just as easy for us to fix it. I mean, that's pretty much what we do right now, is just go out there and fix it, try to fix it with whatever's closer to what they have.
Thank you. Any questions or comments by committee?
Ryan.
You're next, Sherry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Patrick. You're next, Sherry.
Okay. Paul, how many a year do we?
Sherry, Patrick's up. You're
Yes.
next. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I like number 1 personally better. I don't know if the copies of receipts and for the labor and material are really necessary, especially if the homeowner is doing it for himself. This might also give him an incentive to do it. So instead of just saying or up to $100, I'd just make it a flat $100, and then he can fix it at his own expense.
Sherry?
Thank you. If Paul could answer, how many do we experience now a year approximately?
Honestly, it varies on the winter. Depending upon how many times we go out and plow snow. I've had it where we've had probably close to a dozen, and so far this year we've only had 2. So it's variable truly every single year.
Okay, I don't know, to me, it just, $100 seems a little high. You know, the Rubbermaid ones, when I reviewed, you know, range between $50, $60. Now, granted, that doesn't include a post if it was broke. I just thought maybe is a little steep. Thank you.
My understanding, Sherry, is it's for up to $100 towards the repair. So if there's a lesser valued mailbox, we're going out and trying to get something of the same or equal value. So we wouldn't be just giving them the $100.
That was my comment, is that you would just give them the $100 for repairing and replacing it.
Any other questions by committee? Anyone else? Mr. Bemke.
So, Paul, what are you going to do with the big banks of, you know, you've got some pretty nice mailboxes that come in, you know, one neighborhood I'm talking about, but then you've got the big metal boxes, and where are those going to fall in this?
I'm guessing, you know, so we had that situation a week ago, or 2 weeks ago, I'm sorry, where we hit one of the metal ones and we were able to fix it. And so that's where, you know, to what Alderperson Delaney said, if we choose to pick option 1, we would try to fix that. If we're not able to fix it, then they would simply get $100 towards that.
Any other questions? Hearing none, what are the committee's wishes?
I'll make a motion to approve option 1, striking the for up to $100 and leaving it as $100, and taking out the copies of the receipts are required for both materials and labor.
I'll second. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to vote. All in favor, respond with aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Item number 3, review the snow removal policy. Paul?
Okay, again, this is a carry on from last month's meeting to Alderperson Delaney's request to go through and review the ordinance, state statute, I'm sorry. Attorney Schill and I reviewed the state statute, and they're really, the best way to say it is the state statute just requires us to remove the snow in a 3 weeks time period. And so we did also look at other municipalities, because I think another issue was whether or not to plow alleys. We did look at other municipalities, La Crosse, Milwaukee, Wausau, Eau Claire, and majority of them do not do any sort of plowing of alleys. One of my concerns with that, though, is that a lot of the alleys we use for access, because their garbage collection is off the alleys and not off the front curbs. And our investment for maintaining those alleyways is really, on a normal snowfall, 6 to 8 hours, you know, for one individual to plow those alleys, and which isn't a whole lot of money. I think if we required to have those residents take their garbage collection to the curb, you know, most of them don't have walks to go to the front or anything like that. So, sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. So I had spoken with an attorney about this. I've also read many articles about snow and ice in Wisconsin. And so if a street or alley, one of the responses I got was, alleys over which the town has jurisdiction and which have been open to the public must be plowed within 3 weeks after a storm to avoid potential liability under Wisconsin statute 893.83. So I would, I'm fine with what you have been doing as far as that goes.
Okay, sorry about that. So we did not make any revisions to what we did, what we had last month at all. So for the most part, it's the same. We did not cite anywhere in the policy the state statute 893.83 at all. If you would like us to do that, we could put together a sentence, stating that, but otherwise it's the same item attachment that you guys had last month.
Questions or comments? Mr. Delaney?
So I apologize for interrupting. So yeah, there's a couple places in here which it references that there's no guarantee is made that the snow will be loaded or that the snow and ice will be the removal of it within a specific time period. I think 3 weeks goes along with the state statutes. So I would like to see that added in. Also, I just wanted to mention that the Chapter 66, 0907, it is refers to the Board of Public Works having the authority over this. So we are responsible, and obviously Paul Vollert is the responsible one that we've given this to. And I think that something like this, even though it might not seem that big of a deal, I think if we give them clear direction, I think that would help, right? Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Anyone? Hearing none, what are the committee's wishes?
I'll make a motion to hold this over until next month with revisions, adding statutes discussed here. And thanks.
Do we need a motion to hold that over? Yes? Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, respond with aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Item number 4, review the January Engineering and Street Department Activities Report. We want to start off with Mr. Engsted. You there, Joe? You may be on mute.
You guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, the engineering and department report for the month of January. Just a couple highlights. The rail extension in the Rapids East Commerce Center has reached substantial completion as of January 8th. In fact, just this week, a final walkthrough was held with the contractor, CN, the DOT, and Telco. And so that project is wrapping up nicely. In addition, we had a meeting with the DNR, both city staff and consultant that we had used to help with river modeling in regards to the levee project. That is moving forward as well. It looks like we got through the final questions that the DNR had with the project, and looks like we will be. Lastly, we're getting our 2022 bid. The first one that we have complete and ready to go is the crushing contract That's actually posted here probably tomorrow. We've also got staff working on asphalt contracts and concrete contracts, and they'll be following here shortly to get advertised and posted. So that's the update for the month. If there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions for Joe? Paul, you have anything on this? Go ahead.
Our update is attached, just a few highlights. Garbage collection seems to be consistent throughout the years. Estimated tons of 350 tons for garbage. Recycling is right around 100 tons per month. We provided a Christmas tree pickup in January, and then also cleaned up from the windstorm that we had in that second week of December to the properties that we weren't able to get to. Also, too, then put Christmas decorations away from West Grand Avenue and the Expressway Bridge, and then at the main highway entrances. We completed our construction plan review for the 2022 construction projects, and started to get ready to order the project or products for that season. Again, with the windstorm, we had some damage to the expressway fence, and then also a vehicle that struck that fence. We continue to go through and brush the road right-of-ways, preparing for both our chip sealing program next year, and then also just cutting back areas where it's overgrown into the road right-of-way. Some of the areas prior to Lincoln Street on the expressway, we had asphalt patches in that were heaving up because of the cold temperature. We rented a cold planer from Fabic Rents and milled those areas down to try to get rid of them the best that we can. Worked really well on on the asphalt, but not so well on the concrete. So those areas will be fixed in the spring. Our sign crew assisted with removing of the Christmas decorations. With last month's approval of the parking ordinance, they then began to start to switch some of those signs over and or reface them, whichever ones they needed. So we got going on that also. Because of some staffing issues and things like that, those two gentlemen also assisted us with snow removal, the 3 little snow events that we had there in January, I'm sorry. We also assisted the city clerk in preparing for this month's elections. Had to do some refacing on some signs because of the changes in venues for voting and stuff like that. Our shop continues to be maintained busy. Had some recalls on some squad cars, and we had some damage to some vehicles due to wear and tear from snow events and things like that. So that's all we had.
Thank you. Any questions for Paul? Hearing none, we'll move on. Item number 5, review the ITS grant proposals. Mr. Eichstead? You're on mute again.
How's that?
Good to go.
Okay. The DOT grant is funding about $535,000 at a 90/10 cost share. Upgrades, Expressway, Chase Street, and High Street. In order to accomplish preparing for that project, we solicited for engineering from that we know have the technical resources to do the traffic engineering for that type of project. We did reach out to the DOT traffic engineer and got recommendations from them in order to put together a list of consultants. And we only ended up getting one proposal. Strand declined submitting a proposal just based on other things they had going on. MSA did partner with CBS Squared, who has special expertise in railroad preemption, which is a big driver for the project. Their proposal was $71,355, and it includes design, bidding, and construction services. So it's a full gamut of services for the project. There's some assumptions that were made for the construction services, and I don't anticipate that there will need to be a lot of actual construction work that's going on. In addition, the DOT selected for the West Back Street as well. So that'll be going on at the same time that the project would be happening. They'd be right next door. So cost standpoint, would be a benefit. The recommendation would be to approve the proposal in the amount of $71,355. And I guess I should point out that 90-10 split includes, the 90-10 cost share with the DOT includes design services as well. And so the $71,000 proposal fee from MSA would be included in that 90-10 split.
Thank you. Any questions or comments by committee?
Brian, Tom Reumert, just a question.
Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah. Joe, does this, would any way come into play or alleviate or whatever if we wanted to look at what's been talked about over a number of years, having a quiet zone there? And I'm not speaking that I'm necessarily totally in favor of that, but we've had requests over the years to do that along this stretch here. This is one of the areas. I just wondering as I look this over with this. I know this may not be enough money, but is this, or is it? Would it be something to look at if that's what people would want to do to look into further having quiet zone there where the trains wouldn't blow their whistles, which I don't know that we've had too many complaints lately. I haven't heard of them, but over the years we have had off and on of that.
You're muted, Joe.
How's that?
Gotcha.
All right. I'm not sure what's going on. It kind of keeps cutting in and out here, but apologize for that. So for the quiet zone, there's a certain amount of safety that's required. And in order to meet those safety thresholds, you need to have certain infrastructure in place. Usually just taking away the quiet or taking away the horn, you have to supplement that with additional items. So primarily this grant is meant to improve our traffic signals for the road. And the only correlation or cooperation with the railroad is largely that our traffic signals know that there's a train coming. And we know the situation with the train. So we know if the gates are up, if we know the gates are down, we know that the train is still occupying the crossing versus having cleared the crossing. That's the sort of, interaction that this project will have with the railroad. But it isn't intended to upgrade the railroad crossing safety.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I do agree with Mr. Rayom. It's a topic that I've been trying to choose my battle wisely on. Quiet zones, High Street, West Grand, Gainer. So that battle's yet to come. So hearing no more questions, what are the committee's wishes?
I'll make a motion to approve the proposal for the MSA grant for $71,355.
We have a motion
I'll second.
and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to vote. All in favor, respond with aye.
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 Ayes have it. Moving on, item number 6, review the parking ordinance along Lincoln Street, 27.131C19 revisions. Mr. Eichstead?
How's that?
Gotcha.
All right. So we didn't review this any closer. I guess the last time that I had spoken with Mr. Delaney, he had intended to reach out, and perhaps he has. If he hasn't, we can certainly reach out and find out try to reach those neighboring property owners and see if they have a history of those parking ordinance in some of their properties.
Any questions, Mr. Delaney?
Yeah, so I did stop down there. Not everybody was home, but the residents that I did talk to, they didn't see a need for this no parking sign. It's kind of an odd one. When we went through the sign ordinance, it's just one that covers 3 homes on Lincoln Street on the east side, just south of Ida's restaurant. Actually, it's maybe 2 properties down from Ida's restaurant on the east side. I've actually given this a lot of thought, and I don't see any reason that we have it other than when it was created, someone was parking there at a rental on that street. But I do believe that our other city ordinances cover that for parking at night. So it would be my proposal just to eliminate this altogether and remove the signs.
Are you making a motion?
I'll make a motion to remove 27.13 sub 1 sub C sub 19.
I'll second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to vote. All in favor, respond with aye.
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 Ayes have it. Item number 7, review and set up the preliminary target revenue amount for the transportation utility. Mr. Eichstead.
We are nearing the final chapter with updating the model and all of the accounts. I think the last information that we've got sent to R.A. Smith, they've got everything that staff has worked on, and final model should be forthcoming in the next week or so. At the last Public Works meeting, we talked about the need to set a preliminary target revenue amount. And what that would do is provide consensus on what amount utility should generate. But then it allows us to get into the next step, which would be a public review period, which we have a target revenue amount. We can plug that into the model and then open it up for the public to call in, email, something online, hop in to the engineering department and ask questions, and find out what their charge is anticipated to be. for their parcel. And so staff met. We took a look back at kind of conversations that have taken place to date, and decided to put information together for the committee using a target revenue value of $2 million. And the $2 million proposed amount is based on reallocating existing costs, the tax levy to a different funding source. Of course, would be the transportation utility. And that proposed target revenue amount doesn't include new dollars. It wouldn't increase the tax levy. I would only reallocate the current expenditures from the tax levy to the utility. And so the $2 million is largely comprised of the $350,000 assessments, and then $1.65 million for net proceeds to fund the road construction project. That's where the $1 million comes from. And based on some assumptions, Finance Director Tim Sorcy went through and produced some documents here, and I think he's still on the line with us. And so I'm hoping that he might be able to walk through, at least in introduction, these documents and kind of explain the impact of properties, the tax levy, and how that changes over time as the debt is paid off. So if Tim's on, he
Looks
can
like he's
take
on.
it away.
Tim, go ahead.
Sure. When we identify the $2 million revenue target of the transportation utility and the reallocation of existing costs to a user fee for the transportation utility, we kind of identified some categorical types of businesses or trip charges that would be impacted by the transportation utility, and that would be the fast food, gas station, bar, restaurant, grocery store, and residential. And this is by no means to be all inclusive. It's just some examples that we wanted to come up to, show the impact of the transportation utility with the $2 million revenue target. And basically that's comprised of, obviously special assessments of $350. But the biggest impact is that if transportation utility revenue was to fund street construction as opposed to issuing debt proceeds, what that decrease in debt over the time span would impact those properties. And so basically, as you can see, is that we have the scenario, the current funding model where we do use debt proceeds to fund annual street construction costs compared to transportation utility fee, which would basically fund street construction costs where we would not have to issue debt, and then that decreasing debt service rate over the life of our existing outstanding debt, what impact there would be in debt service property tax savings compared to TUD. So kind of this is what these models lay out. And, and obviously with, a reallocation of costs based on a different methodology from property tax to trips, these schedules are meant to demonstrate the impact of that shift in those existing costs.
Thank you. I guess the $2 million question that everybody's dying to know is what is this going to cost the businesses? The businesses that produce the most amount of trips. What are those fees going to look like? And that's really what we're trying to find to make a decision at what level of funding we think is appropriate. So any questions from committee? So, Joe, what do you anticipate as far as timeline when we can actually see some of these hard numbers and To me, that's the starting point for us at this point. We got nothing, Joe.
All right, how's that?
Gotcha.
Okay. So as soon as R.A. Smith is done with incorporating those changes into the model, I mean, we'll have the full model at that point. We have what we have today. I mean, if we know that, right, let's look at $1 million target revenue. We can get pretty close to a lot of these properties. One thing that I would caution, even after the model's done, is that individual properties, comparison to like a competitor type property, it might be hard to do a direct comparison because their building size might be different, parking lot size might be different, affect the number of trips, how we're looking at coming up with a number of trips. So a direct comparison between property types maybe, but you know, we've got a working model. I've got it up on my computer actually. So the biggest number that changes what it's going to cost the property owner revenue. So even if the committee were to say, well, I think, you know, 2 million is too high, I think go with 1.2 million or whatever the number is, at least we'd have a value that we could feed to the public comment period. And it can always be modified or changed either with review of the ordinance or any time before or after. It's providing some direction in the certainly if there's questions regarding different property types. You know, in the packet there's information put together for a typical bar type restaurant or fast food gas station and what they would be paying monthly based upon a $2 million target revenue.
Thank you. Mr. Delaney?
To me, I think that $2 million is too much. And this had all started by wanting to relieve the special assessments that have grown over the years into the tens of thousands of dollars. And so I would think that if we covered the special assessments of $350,000 and added $150,000 for road resurfacing, so that we'd be right around that $500,000 mark, I think that would be a lot more reasonable. With these examples, some of them are over $1,000 a month. I think that's an awful big burden to put on even a large business. $1,000 is quite a bit of money.
Dean?
Joe, you said when R.A. Smith is finished, where is R.A. Smith in the process at this point? And when are you talking weeks, are we talking months? Or?
So they have all the changes that we've provided to them. So city staff have gone through and reviewed a bunch of the accounts back to R.A. Smith on what needs to be. The master Excel file, and it's a big spreadsheet, and so it's got all the accounts in there. And as they finish incorporating the changes that we've provided to them, you know, we should have this fully complete spreadsheet. I guess once we have that complete, how best would should be provided back to the committee.
Good, Dean?
Yeah, that's it. Thanks. seems like we're paying them.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I would agree and echo Patrick's thoughts. You know, you're looking at a grocery here, you're talking grocery store almost $15,000 a year. You know, I don't know. I would not be comfortable with that myself. But I do think we went into this project looking at relieving property owners of the special assessment portion. And, you know, with the mill and overlay extra in there, you know, that will definitely improve or go to improve a little better on our ride quality on some of our roads. And I think that number would get us down into a more manageable number to charge, you know, that business group, even though there is a great benefit and it'll be quite a relief to property owners. But I do think that the full 2 million at this point is too much too fast. And, you know, that I think that needs to be stepped back. But, you know, and that's still part of our discussion was how are we going to handle and address people that have been previously special assessed. And that has to be factored in, and that has to be a discussion at some point here also. But I just want to speak in favor of what Patrick said. Thank you.
Thank you. I would say that I am leaning a little bit more towards the special assessment end myself at this point, especially with the conversations about reworking budget timelines and trying to reel in the amount of debt that we're pulling out every year. So I think to try to just hastily go after the full 2 million at this point, so we're not borrowing for construction, is a bit hasty with the work that council has, the path that we have set forth in front of us. So, any other questions?
I have one, Ryan.
Sherry?
Joe, I've been reviewing all the materials, and the one handout that we got from Ellers back on August 30th is just one of the PowerPoints that we repeatedly got every month, where it lists, you know, the scenarios 1 through 5, and then it had like single home, you know, and single home, commercial building, office. So like the single family home for the scenario 1, which is basically just the assessments that we were worried about, you know, the annual fixed charge of $424, you know, still the 9.44 trips per day with 7,400 properties that would be assessed. The monthly service charge, $1.20, annual utility charge, $14.38. That's still pretty current, what you're seeing. I mean, I know we've gotten materials since, you know, early last year, mid last year. Have any of those numbers significantly changed from what we were that we received?
So as far as the trips, the number of trips that are generated,
go ahead.
They largely haven't changed. Still 9.44 trips per residential property. It would, what would change though is perhaps the base charge will change, because as part of the task that city staff had was to take the electric utility accounts that are active and try to associate the number of accounts per property. So some commercial properties are going to have, they have 4 electric meters. They may have 4 spaces. So the original database that was put together at the time with didn't account for all of those additional accounts in the database. So the base charge, you know, if the number of accounts go up, the base charge would actually decrease the property. That's a change that we would anything that we're looking at today will largely be brought down on a citywide scale. It'll be cheaper, I guess, as we move final model.
Okay. And like, but the amount and I know you can't, I mean, I know you have it there, but I mean, like I said, I was going through all of the spreadsheets that we have just for special assessment, besides the base charge that will be charged every month, which, like you said, could go down because there's probably more meters that you're finding that, so that cost is going to go down. So I'm just trying to figure out if the numbers are substantially different. I mean, we have all the materials that we had, you know, that we've been given all of last year on a monthly basis. Those amounts would be pretty standard besides the fixed charge.
Yeah. On a citywide basis, the number of trips aren't going to change a great deal. The number or the amount of the base charge, that's the one that will go down, although it's only a fraction of what a trip bill could be. So I guess for comparison, we talked briefly about the grocery store, and you know, at $2 million, it was upwards of $1,000 a month. And if we looked at a $350,000 target revenue for a grocery store, we'd be around the $200 or $225 a month. And of course, you know, it goes up incrementally. Got a couple other scenarios that I put together with 1 million and 1.65 million.
In the original PowerPoints that we got from Ellers that I'm referring to, that we got, you know, July, August, September, whatever, correct me if I'm wrong, but we were kind of basing off 1.7 back then. Was that correct? That number sticks out to me.
I'm not entirely sure on that, on what that value was. I know the last amount that was identified in the draft ordinance when that was reviewed, I think in September, that was right around 2 million, maybe 2.1 or 2.2 million. But I'm not sure with Ellers and what total amount we were looking at that time.
Okay, and I found it. It was on table 8, but it said 2022 projects. The go note 1.7. So I think that's where I was getting that from. But, I just wish we would move forward with something. You know, we've been talking about this, and I reviewed materials back when I started on council in April, and Public Works Department had been talking they've been talking about this for, you know, a year before that, you know, and now I found the old schedule that we were supposed to have, you know, the hearings back in, you know, September, October, November. We're going to have this in place in January. Now it's January. We don't even know what we're doing yet. I know I'm not saying that we just need to rush out and do something, but I mean, it was nice, I think, to have the database kind of complete, you know, so everyone knows. But in essence, what's the difference? I mean, we're going to move forward with this, we're going to move forward with it. Are we going to have, you know, I don't know, 100 people say, no, I don't like it because my property, when I call in and this is what I'm going to have, are we going to not do it for that? You know, if that's what we're all worried about, let's just do special assessment, start with the special assessment. That way it's, you know, we're making a move forward, but yet we're not just laying it all out there like some of you are saying tonight. Why don't we just start with that? We can always grow from that. And like I said, the same with the storm water utility. Every year that goes up. Doesn't mean that we can't, okay, this is going successful, you know, people are getting accustomed to it. Let's grow, let's do more road work, which obviously we do. Like some of your hesitation from some of the committee members and the council, you know, let's not move so fast. But I just urge us all to make a decision and to move forward, because we have to do two hearings yet after we decide what we're doing. You know, I don't know if the ordinance has been 100%. I know I have some issues with it. But I mean, we have a lot of work to do, and it's already January. And I know when we talked with Tim DeSorcy last council meeting, usually we have our special assessment hearings in April. And I know he said, you know, we can push those back. And I know, you know, you guys have directed engineering, Joe, as staff, to not concentrate on the special assessments because, you know, we want to move forward with the transportation utility. Well, let's move forward with it. You know, we talk about it every month, but it's now a year and a half that we've been talking about it. We're not going anywhere with it. But I would be comfortable going with special assessments, kind of like Patrick said, just to get it out there. Let's move forward with that, and we can always grow from that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I agree. I think you have two questions before you. A, are we going to go ahead with the transportation utility? And B, what's the funding level? And I think those two answers, you know, would be nice to have so then we can progress forward to the next step. Because, yeah, there's been so much planning and discussion going on over the last 2 years and developing the model and the trip model. But yeah, we're at that point where we need to decide, yes, are we going to go through with the transportation utility and what that funding level is going to be. And I'll reiterate and echo what's already been said is that, you know, we went into this for special assessments. They are so out of control, and it is just way too much to put on a property owner. And that at a minimum should be done. And if that's all we do and start at, I think that's going to be a big step forward. If there's a little extra in there for mill and overlay, that's another discussion. But at a minimum, this needs to be done with special assessments, and we do need to make a decision and move forward. Because then it'll have to go to an ordinance phase, and we'll have to go through that also. Thank you.
Paul, sorry, go ahead, Dean.
So that $350,000 number, you say the extra for mill and overlays, that's not going to change. I mean, if we say, special assessments, $350,000, and that's what we targeted. So we estimate this will be, I agree that we need to capture special assessments on it. What if it comes to 400 and then you're taking it 150 for mill and overlay? So does it become 400 special assessments and 100 for mill and overlay, or do you fit a number? Basically, is the purpose to eliminate special assessments?
I think the purpose is to eliminate special assessments, whether it be road assessments or sidewalk assessments. And I think, and Joe or Nick can correct me, but 350 is the average. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's a little less. So I believe 350 is about the average.
Yeah. Okay.
So the 350 is every year, that's the amount that is basically put on to property owners. What about the folks that are already paying special assessments? How much funds is there, and is that something we should consider also funding?
Yeah, and so that is another topic for discussion is what do we do with the recent specialists? And at some point, you have to draw a line and say, you know, the people prior to this point, it's just we've done something different now, but there are people that are currently paying off large special assessments, and there's people that paid them off. So within the last 5 years, I'm not sure how many people that affected. Today, I asked him to figure out, and at some point he'll be able to do that, what we have for outstanding special assessments currently on the books, what we're waiting to receive from property owners. So I don't have that number specifically at this point, but that is a discussion that's going to have to happen at some point. You know, where's that line drawn, and what do we do about people that have paid it off or are currently paying them off?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul, you got any feedback on this at all?
I guess I really haven't followed it that closely just because it was something that eventually was going to affect us. But ultimately, yeah, it would be great to have some additional funding to put together a better mill and overlay program. You know, maybe it's such a thing that if we want to go backwards on the special assessments, that we say, okay, this is our funding level, and for the first 3 years of that funding level, we would pay backwards on the special assessments, and then in whatever 2026 is when we start to fund our mill and overlay program better. You know, I've said it before, with 180 miles of roadway, and reconstructing 1 mile of roadway a year, we can't keep up, and so, it'd be great to be able to do more, but you also have to have the funds available for that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Zacher?
I have one.
Just a second, Sherry. You'll be after Matt, Sherry.
Okay, thanks.
I kind of have flipped a little bit on this. When I first started, I think that I was all for this transportation utility, as it was the only avenue to go down, or the best avenue to go down. I guess I've learned enough over the last 10 months to know that I still firmly believe that the money that we need is in the budget, and the budget's got to be overhauled. So I'm not in favor anymore of starting another tax, whatever you want to call it, to grow. And I think we've all expressed our concerns about it. It'll start out small now, but once it's set up, it can grow and grow and grow and grow. And I'm not sure how we contain that beast once it gets going. I think that we can certainly find the money in the budget for the special assessments to cover that right away and figure out how to take care of the people who have paid in. I'd almost like to see the numbers as to when the money for special assessments went from a reasonable amount to skyrocketing the way it did, because everybody I talked to in the community said that it wasn't that long ago that it was a reasonable amount of money that they were paying into it. And I don't know if something changed at that point, or if that's when prices just skyrocketed on construction, or what the reasoning is behind that. I'm not really sure. But again, I feel like to take the burden off the taxpayers that are funding our city, and not put that more burden on them, and to kind of put it on the responsibility on the city itself and find it in the budget, is where I'm at. Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, sorry, Sherry, go ahead.
Thank you. Matt, I totally, agree what you say, but we have to remember too, we have to borrow. You're never going to grow if you don't borrow, just like, we borrow for a car, we borrow for home repairs and that. But, and also the consideration, I know you're talking about where, the fees have gone up. And Paul, Joe, you guys know, things have gone up. I remember I paid only $4,000 for my assessment. I just got done my 10-year mark, but that same concrete work, labor, it has gone up significantly. And at the city, we have, wages that we're constantly paying. We have training, we have, insurance. Our tax, all of that as a city that we pay out has gone up. And to find $1 million in the budget, as we said, we'll start the budget process a little earlier last year, but I don't know if we're going to find enough to, maybe special assessments and some road work. Hopefully some of the funding that we got will be able to help with the road work, or, but I don't know. But I just hope that you guys make a decision that we can move forward with that. Look at the ordinance again. I thought there was something in there that had been sort of finalized when the ordinance was presented regarding people that are still paying, kind of like Mayor said, that are paying their special assessments. How do we credit them? But we have a lot of work to do, and it's already February. So I'd like to see move a little faster on this. But that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I think you're trying to chime in, Tom. You might be muted.
How's that?
There you go.
Okay. I think, it started out decades ago with special assessments. Didn't go anywhere until probably now we got it. Then it came up with did come up, and then the utility became part of the discussion. I think through the discussion, though, I think everybody hopefully learned a lot by that of how many miles of road we have in this community and the condition that they're in. I hope those charts have been kept to people too. And eventually those are going to have to be taken care of. Now, an overlay to extend the life of them is one thing. I don't know that will get us to where we want to be. And I don't have the chart right in front of me, but a lot of our roadways are over that 60-year-old mark. So before we go cut ourselves short, I think where do we really want to go and be? When I hear that we don't want to grow, it concerns me. Because to take care of our streets and infrastructure, how else are you going to grow? It costs money to operate. If anybody here thinks it's a freebie, it ain't. Those who think they can find $1 million in the budget to support something, you're going to have to tell me where you get it from. Don't tell this department to take $1 million so I can have it over here. Those who want to cut, you're going to have to say where you want to cut and what you want to cut. Now, if the $2 million isn't right, I definitely don't agree with $350,000. That's getting us nowhere, other than special assessments. Yes, I think, Sherry, we have to make a decision and move forward. I think we could. I think we have to decide where we want to go. And yes, we're going to hear complaints from the people, what there is. Now we're going to have to decide if we want to go through with that. So would he have to start on the top end? Maybe not. I don't know if it's right to start on the bottom end and then say in 3 years we can look at what to do. That puts us 3 more years behind the ball game. At some point in time, we've been elected. We have to step up to the plate, either make the city move forward, or, as I hear, regress. Because people are afraid of that dollar sign. Now, you can't just say money's going to fall out of the sky. That's obvious. We have to do what's realistic. A big percentage of the city's operation is wages, benefits. And that's even after a lot of people have been cut over the last 10 years. That's not going down. Special assessments is one of the worst taxes that we've had in the city. It affects, well, everybody it affects that gets hit with it. But it for sure affects those people on the low end, the income scale. Those on set income, retired people. They're going to get by on just their Social Security that have been retired a number of years. That's why I tried starting this decades ago. But we didn't go nowhere. So at least we're moving. But I think even that, to me anyway, is too little of a baby step. Just do that. Let's do right for this city for a change and look forward and move forward. That's why this utility came about. Gee. It wasn't my doing. I learned as we went about it. There's a way that we could maybe do more than just a special assessment. Well, I hope everybody just takes it into account what they really want to do. And what I've heard too many times, let's start low. Can always grow. That may be true. Then I hear, see for 3 years what happens, and then see. By the time the 3 years comes and goes, some of us aren't going to be here. That 3-year mark, when it does come and go, people aren't going to know that they're supposed to do something with it or look at it again. So let's put it in the process. Decide on a figure, maybe that can't be tonight. But I think we have to look at what do we get for $2 million? What do we get for $350,000? What do we get for the $1 million? I think Joe said, you said you've got scenarios of what there is. That I think we could see what that is, and that should all be weighed out, not just look at what the dollar number is. What do we get for that? And what does it cost? And what is the cost to the people? And what is the cost to the businesses? I think all those scenarios have to be, that should all be laid out. And really what I think, and yeah, the time is going by. Time has slipped by. One reason or another. This is something that may not just be for the regular public works meeting. This may be something that is a special 1, 2, or 3, or 4 extra public works meetings for the only item on the agenda. Move it along. They're not just going month by month. I guess that would probably be my comments. I think that just think about what we really want to do and where we want to be. What do we want to be? What does Rapids want to be known for? Do we accept to be known as a retirement community? Is that what people are looking at here that I'm talking to? Is that what this is? And we shouldn't hear about trying to get jobs. Look at more resorts or something. Somebody has to lead. For what we have for leaders are one who don't want to, afraid to spend that dollar. I'm not just saying to throw it away, go wild with it. That's why you have to look at the different scenarios. Cost money to operate. We want to take care of the special assessments there. That's what it started with. We want to look at further doing with the streets and that, what we can do, or could do, possibly do. How much? We're doing less than a mile a year, as is. How much can we overlay for a few $100,000 or whatever extra? Because that isn't even thought, $350 for the assessment. So what the dollar figure would be for overlays, how much could realistically we get done? That should be part of the conversation. And I really think it is. I think the committee needs probably to look at extra meetings to have on this. But I totally agree with Sherry. We have to move it forward. And going just 1 month at a time, we ain't going to be moving it forward. We don't move it forward. comes a point in time that this, if we want to do something with it, and I think we've gotten to the point that extra meetings are going to have to take place, and they should be just called extra meetings, and that's the only item on the meeting. Only item on the meeting. And get the different scenarios out there of what can be accomplished by so much money. Again, me, I feel more comfortable with doing it in knowing how much I get for the buck versus just saying how many bucks I put out. So I can make a decision on how far and what I want to do. With that, I'll leave it up to the committee. You go ahead and I can just make a decision on what you want to do. But one way or the other, I fully encourage you to move this along somehow. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Any other comments, Mr. Zacher?
Just in a few response, thank you. I don't believe that the only way we can move forward and progress is by going in debt to do it or to start a new tax system. And I think ultimately, we've shown in the last couple of years that we can go into great debt and do great things for the city, but we're still in debt and we still got to figure out how to pay it off. And now our way of paying it off is to put another tax on top of the taxpayers, even though they're already paying the interest on all the money we've already taken out in debt. So I don't, by any means, maybe I live in a different world, but I don't believe taking out debt and call it progress is reality. And that's not the reality of what I see happening here. I see that we are being irresponsible and we've put ourselves in a hole, and I know we can pay it off faster if we start the transportation utility, but that's just a play on words and a play on money. And, you say, Mr. Aom, show us where it comes from. But, I mean, in the end, what I see with the Finance Committee right now is where it's kind of a power struggle of we want to talk about the budget. We want to get to the deeper issues. We want to see where where it can come from. Ultimately, we want the departments to see where they can get it from, and then we got to make the tough decisions. Then we'll make the tough decisions on it because that's what our job is. So in the end, bring it on. Don't hide it from us, and don't say that that we're not moving things forward, because every month we're on schedule. Like right now, we've been waiting on the numbers we got this month for the last 3 months. So we are moving forward, and we're doing the best that we can to make this thing go forward. But it's not something that's just going to happen overnight, because it's not as cut and dry. I mean, we started out with assessments and we were at $2.5 million before we knew it. And then we're seeing, well, how much can we charge the people and the businesses in order to get to $2.5 million? So this is big, and it all goes back on the taxpayers' backs. It's not on the city's back. We're just saying, oh, we're just over, but we can't find it. It's just not there, so we can't do it. So in my opinion, I think that we're a stronger, you say what kind of committee or community do we want to have? I think we should be a fiscally responsible community that has sound financing and has no debt, and we're moving forward, growing new businesses, helping people move into the community on a sound basis, because we're not charging them exorbitant taxes in order to move into the community. So I don't think we should disregard looking internally first, because I think it's appropriate for any business type entity, whether you want to call a government a business or not. You have to still say, when we have to shrink, we have to shrink. If the money's no longer there, we got to shrink in order to figure out how we can grow again, but we stay financially sound in the meantime. We don't just say, hey, we're shrinking, but I think we should just take out debt, more and more debt, in order to pay for everything, even though we can't necessarily afford to do it. So I think there is more than one way to just look at this thing, and I don't think that we should rush into it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Bemke?
I don't have a question. Well, I do have a question to Paul, I guess, just a comment. Patrick threw a number out of $500,000. I guess the way I see it, that covers your special assessment. It gives you a little bit of a cushion, and hopefully there'll be some left over for some mill and fill projects. And Paul, you have $100,000 in your budget right now. I would assume that's going to stay there. I mean, would that be, if you're going to do your budget right now, you would leave that in there, correct?
Until you guys told me I couldn't.
Correct. So you'll have that 100,000 plus a little something extra
Sure.
anyway.
Yep, another 150,000, or, yeah, obviously it depends on what the unit prices are per year, correct?
Thank you.
Anyone else? Hearing nothing, what are the committee's wishes?
I would like to propose a motion to set the target revenue amount for the transportation utility at $500,000. That would be $350,000 for special assessments and $150,000 towards resurfacing.
I'll second that motion. Any other discussion? I guess I'll say that I hear you loud and clear, Mr. Rayom, on the degradation and the quality of our city streets. And I don't believe 100 or 150,000 is enough. I feel like a good number to start off at may be the $450,000 we talked about with the 2+ scenario. But I want to get the ball rolling on the transportation utility, and the way to get it started is to propose an amount, and we can go from here. So, any other discussion?
Just have one question, Mr. Austin.
Yes.
So if you guys approve this target amount for the transportation utility, then Joe, you can plug that in, rework the numbers. And are you guys going to be reviewing the current ordinance, the draft ordinance that we had been presented last year, kind of finalizing that? And is there going to be another discussion on that? Like I said, I have one issue with it, and I know there was a couple other people that had a couple questions regarding the ordinance. And going back to try to figure out, like Mayor Blazer said as well, okay, so what are we going to do with the people that, are still paying with that? I mean, that's a lot of work also, but I'm just trying to figure out a timeline. If you guys approve this, are you guys going to have a special meeting before Common Council this month so we could kind of look at the draft ordinance again, or just kind of wondering what your timeline is? Thank you.
So with the motion for the target revenue amount, what we do is, we're still moving forward to finalize the model. But following council, then, we'll put in a motion trying to set up this public comment question period so that as soon as the model's ready, that we can get press releases out there and try to get solicit questions to make sure that property owners can get questions answered. And then, we can review the ordinance at any time. We could, at the next Public Works meeting, or whenever. The timeline for reconsidering that ordinance, I guess at least what I had laid out from a schedule standpoint was get through the public thereafter. And so that might be as soon as March, but probably not till April. But, I'd be happy to talk about it at any Public Works meeting.
I don't know if Sue's on or anyone knows, but if you guys, like Mr. Rayom said, if you guys have this target amount, you guys could meet again. We could meet at council, talk about, the draft ordinance, those kinds of things. I mean, we could have public hearings. They don't have to be months apart, right? I mean,
right.
we could, we could have them week to week and, you know, and then boom, you know, we could have this all done by April per se, because we all have to remember, you know, we had originally thought that, okay, in January, we're going to start having citizens pay into this for all of 2022 to be effective in 2023. Well, by the time this all goes, it's going to be April. So it's going to be another April until next year, which is 2023 already. And, you know, we haven't even, you know, finalized the ordinance, you know, the hearings and, you know, all of that. It's just like, you know, it could be June, July, and then we all have to. I know Tim had said about the special assessment, or maybe it was you, Joe, because usually we talk, you know, those hearings are usually in April. And I thought that's what policy was, that we had to, I thought somewhere along the line, someone said that we'd have to change our own rule that those assessments, you know, are temporarily going to be pushed back also. And I thought that was, someone had said that, and I just wanted to make sure that we don't break our own ordinance with that as well. Thank you.
If I may comment, as far as the revenue portion of the special assessments, the revenue that we're recognizing in the 2022 budget has already been placed on the tax bill. Any new revenue from anything billed in 2022, we have not recognized because it has not been billed or collected.
Thank you, Tim. Any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion on the floor. We'll go to vote. All in favor, respond with aye. Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Nay.
Ayes have it, passes 2-1. Moving on, item number 8, review the responsible bidder model ordinance. Joe, you want to start us off?
So in your packet, I've included a model ordinance. I did have Attorney Sue Schill. She did have a chance to take a look at it, and some of her comments are also included some documentation that you had sent Brian about the responsible bidder toolkit. But basically, the responsible bidder, the model ordinance would largely formalize we already take with our contract. Overall, I think it's a good idea to have an ordinance in place. It certainly doesn't hurt anything, and it helps your future employees and general direction, and even to let the public and contractors know that the city does take it seriously. We go out to get contractors for projects that they need to be qualified and meet certain requirements in order to do work in the city. In the referral document, I did kind of outline what we currently do with our contracts to ensure that we've got a responsible bidder. And, that information's there. If there's any questions about that, I can certainly answer those questions. But otherwise, I don't have any further background on that.
Thank you, Joe. This was my referral, so I guess I'll kind of lay it out here. Obviously, like Joe said, this is basically would be formalizing what the city is already doing, making sure that we have in writing, and we're holding these contractors that we use, outside contractors, accountable. It also opens up the door for us to maybe not always have to select low bid based on performance from some of these contractors. We had some conversations about this regarding the fire station. Other kind of bullet points with the responsible bidder ordinance, like Joe mentioned, compliance with the law. we could go as far as to require proper training and apprenticeship to make sure that we're getting skilled labor on the work that we subcontract out. Drug testing plans, that's all important stuff that right now isn't necessarily required by the contractors that the city of Wisconsin Rapids hires. Other items like proper employee classification, which is a huge one. It makes it so, some of these contractors have the potential to misclassify their employees, thus escaping from income, payroll, unemployment, and other taxes that fund Wisconsin roads. So I know some of that stuff isn't included at this time, but this gives us the platform to talk about this stuff. So with that, we do have Luke Cramer online. He is a business agent for North Central States Regional Council of Carpenters. He has some experience and some background in some RBOs that have gone through in other communities in the state. And I open up the floor for Luke to comment.
Yeah, thank you for that, Ryan. He kind of spotlighted some of the very big parts of an RBO. One of them definitely is the apprenticeship program. With that, you are focusing more not just on the current generation, but the next generation coming up into the trade. And with a state accredited apprenticeship, Wisconsin is the oldest state in the United States as far as state apprenticeships. And we definitely boast on the training that we have in the state to make sure that we have not just a good quality project, a good price project, but it's a huge understanding when we put into apprenticeships that we know who we're working on these jobs. Brian hit a little bit on wage fraud and tax fraud. And when we talk about the low bid is not always the best bid, as everybody knows, just like buying a car. You're not going to go and find the cheapest car possible. You're going to want to look for quality before you look at price. You guys had an earlier conversation on roads and stuff. Tax Force found that just roughly about $200 billion in total tax revenue was lost in Wisconsin last year due to payroll fraud. And just to kind of make you understand what payroll fraud means in construction, that could be something as simple as myself being an employer. I have 4 employees working for me, and they all classify themselves as their own employees, so that they all 1099. That means I don't pay federal, state, workers' comp insurance. So now if a contractor that has honest employees bidding against me, I have an unfair bidding advantage because basically I'm the employer, but I have no employees. That really hurts our economy in the state because that's lost tax revenue. Talking about road budgets and that's a huge amount of money not even to Wisconsin Rapids, but the state of Wisconsin. And the same thing in Wisconsin with, as far as talk is workers, construction experience as far as wage theft. Right now, about 10% of Wisconsin construction workers experience some form of wage theft. That could be something as minimal as minimum wage, overtime pay, unemployment issues, workers' comp. Superior was kind of one of the main areas that spearheaded responsible bidder ordinance. And their main reason was not only did they want to make sure they had quality contractors on their projects, they wanted them to show a past history to see what kind of projects they've done, if they've had any lawsuits against them, vice versa. But their whole basis was they wanted superior citizens to build superior. And when Prevailing Wage left the state of Wisconsin, it came not just to having people from your own community building your projects, people from your own state. So in the responsible bidder ordinance, they like to see somebody as far as being a licensed contractor in the state of Wisconsin. I think that was last year where we saw down by Madison where somebody was putting in power lines in a community, and a contractor that wasn't even licensed in Wisconsin shut down the whole town, almost killed one of its employees, and they weren't even licensed to be doing that work. And that's a prime example why low bid is not always the best bid. The other thing too, as far as we go through responsible bidder ordinance, if a contractor cheats the system by failing to pay workers' comp, unemployment insurance, the only reward that they should not be receiving is taxpayer dollars. We want to make sure that we have good quality contractors doing our projects.
Thank you, Luke. Any questions or comments by committee?
Ryan, this is Tom.
Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, and I appreciate that you turned this referral in, and I totally appreciate the comments from Mr. Cramer. It's been over the years, I think it's just something that's gone by the wayside, not just here, but across the state with the low bidder and that, and we heard a lot of the reasons how people are getting by that. So that it's not new. I'm glad it was presented here this evening. I think it's something that the council, the committee, the council, viewing public needs to hear. It's very important information. Instead of just hearing the praise things that come out of Madison as a great to work and that type of stuff. So it's I'll be following what this committee wants to do, but I think it's something that possibly that can grow get this started and can grow. So again, thanks to Mr. Cramer for taking the time and appearing tonight. So thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Delaney.
I have a couple of questions for Attorney Schill. First, I would like to read 660903 from Wisconsin state statutes. It says a local governmental unit may not enact and administer an ordinance or other enactment requiring laborers, workers, mechanics, and truck drivers employed on projects of public works or on public-funded private construction projects to be paid the prevailing wage rate and to be paid at least 1.5 times their hourly basic rate of pay for hours worked in excess of prevailing hours of labor or any similar ordinance or enactment. Any such ordinance or enactment that is in effect on July 1st, 2011 is void. I see a section in here, F, says the contractor on the responsible bidder ordinance. It is 3F. The contractor has complied with all provisions of Wisconsin prevailing wage law and federal Davis-Bacon related acts and all rules and regulations therein for projects undertaken by the contractor that are covered by these laws for the past 5 years. Can you speak to that? Am I reading this wrong?
Right. Well, the Wisconsin prevailing wage law does not apply to Wisconsin public construction projects.
So,
and federal Davis-Bacon Act. I mean, this is basically saying you need to comply with it, whatever the state law is regarding wages. If there is a prevailing wage, if there's not, federal Davis-Bacon Act. This isn't saying anything counter to what the law is regarding prevailing wage.
okay, so when it says that the contractor has complied with all provisions of the prevailing wage law,
That are undertaken by the contractor that are covered by these laws. And this would not be, I'm assuming, I guess, a public works construction project for us would not be subject to Wisconsin prevailing wage law.
I'm sorry, I'm confused now. I'm fine if I'm wrong on this, but the way I read it.
Well, there is a
that-
Wisconsin prevailing wage law, okay? And if those or any other wage laws, federal Davis-Bacon, Wisconsin prevailing wage, any other rules or regulations regarding those, the contractor would need to abide by those if the construction was covered by those laws. So to the extent that the public construction is not, then they would not be covered by those laws or be subject to those laws.
Okay, so
Well, and let's say they, okay, let's put it another way. Let's say they did a job not in Wisconsin, or, well, that was subject to a prevailing wage law. I guess for the past 5 years, would they have been subject to a Wisconsin prevailing wage law? Yeah, I guess I don't think we're stating that they have to be subject to Wisconsin prevailing wage law, because the law is clear that the contractor would not be covered by these laws in a general situation of a public construction project for the city.
that's clear as mud to me. So,
Well, maybe Mr. Cramer has thoughts on that, because
He
this
has
is
his hand up. Go ahead, Luke.
I just kind of wanted to spotlight that a responsible bidder ordinance does not dictate pay of a contractor. All it is dictating that you are deeming that contractor qualified. So this is not a union, non-union issue. This is strictly saying that we want to make sure that we have skilled, quality contractors doing our work. And what that means is that it gives the city council a chance to look through and make sure they can approve and go through their background to make sure that they're getting quality contractors doing the project. So there's nothing in there as far as guaranteeing wages for employees.
okay, my other,
They may have been involved in other projects that were subject to Wisconsin prevailing wage law, and we're basically saying they had to have complied with those in all those projects if they were covered by the Wisconsin prevailing wage law, if they were covered by Federal Davis-Bacon Act, that they had to be covered by any laws applicable to them for the past 5 years. So that's not necessarily saying for this project that they are, because probably they are not. So it's more of a historical, did they get in trouble for not abiding by wage laws, Davis-Bacon prior? It's not stating that they have to on this project.
my other question, and thank you for your answers and all that you do for our city. I really do appreciate it.
You do.
The other question I had was concerning what we currently do. Say, for instance, we had a company bid on a project. They did poor work, and they had to redo their work. And then they put in another bid for it. Because of their past performance with our city, could we currently not take the lowest bid because it's lowest and qualified? Could we say that you're not a qualified bidder even though you're the lowest?
As a general question, I would say yes, this certainly would. I mean, when you say poor performance, what does that mean? I guess, but I think that's a reason to have, without this ordinance, we deal in more, it's difficult to say to someone, well, you're not qualified because of this or this, and because we don't really have anything backing up saying, well, these are specifically the things that you need to do to be qualified. And so I guess this just gives us more tools and more support for the decisions that we make to disqualify someone. So, it's not like we couldn't have looked for each of these things before, but we really probably didn't look for each of these things before, and it was probably more of a performance, but, how bad does the performance have to be? Or was it maybe just one time, or was it a small project? So I think this really kind of codifies somewhat what we're doing, but really puts the spotlight on really a lot of important things that all of our contractors should be cognizant of and qualified in. So, I'm very much supportive of it because it'll make those decisions easier when there's someone that comes in with a bid that we've had a history with, or they're going to have to show us that they're qualified by a lot of the different provisions in here. So previous, I think it in the past, I think it was more a little hesitancy in probably disqualifying people without having a strong structure within which to even make those decisions.
That's all I have for right now. Thank you.
Mr. Zacher.
I don't have anything for you, Sue. Thank you, though, for the information you did give us. So when I'm reading this, my first reaction is always, it makes all the sense in the world. Like, I see where the importance is in order to make sure you keep the riffraff out. The other side to that sword, though, is that I don't know if anybody could speak to it in terms of the smaller businesses that don't necessarily, I guess when I think about this, it makes me, I start sweating a little bit when I think of a small business. But I think if I were to run a small business, I would figure out how to get this, you spend a lot of late nights figuring out how to get all this information together. It's really geared towards a big business, in my opinion, with a lot of money and a lot, person that's set aside to make sure that all the I's and T's are crossed so that you can hand in this big packet of paperwork in order to get the bid, or just to be able to submit the bid. So I would be concerned about small businesses, startup businesses, and then I guess the gentleman did say it's not a union, non-union thing. I guess if he could elaborate a little bit more on that, and then how this doesn't negatively impact small businesses or startup businesses.
I'll just start off by saying this wouldn't have any jurisdiction over any private business construction. This is strictly for city-funded projects.
So would this assume that somebody would have to get enough projects that they can put on their resume that would allow them to even enter a bid for the city before they can enter a bid?
Potentially.
And should we structure that a little bit or detail that maybe a little further so we're not excluding a startup business or a smaller business that, doesn't have the same. I again, don't get me wrong. I understand we don't want a small business or startup business that does shoddy work. That's what we want out. But let's say somebody's trying to give it a good go and they have high standards and they're just getting started. Is there something we can put in here to help them? Or is it basically saying, well, this is really designed for people who are already at this certain level to be able to even enter a bid?
Joe, do you want to?
And I can talk.
Go ahead, Luke.
I can kind of talk on that a little bit. It's designed to set ramifications to make sure that you're getting a quality bidder. When I talk about having a startup business or that, if it's coming to a city project, you're probably not going to want somebody who's just starting out of the ground that has no history of projects using taxpayer money to build something. That would just be my thought. But if they have quality background as far as like the apprenticeship and stuff, any company can start up an apprenticeship. Doesn't matter how long they've been in business. I work with contractors that have 3 employees up to 150 employees. So the size of the company really doesn't matter. It's just really what a responsible bidder ordinance is designed to do is to make sure that you're getting quality candidates bidding on your project. It's just laying out guidelines.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Patrick.
I would like to reflect what Mr. Zacher had said, that it does seem like instead of having a broader participation as far as bidding goes, this would narrow the participation as far as bidding goes. For me personally, I would rather go through many different, 50 different bidders and have to choose the best one than go through 2 bidders and have to choose the best one out of 2. That's me personally. Also, if you could speak with the local small businesses, you had brought up the firehouse reconstruction that they're doing, which uses a lot of local businesses in participation with that. And for local governments, I think having local participation is key, because every dollar that is paid in wages in a town, they've done studies in it, on it, and that dollar gets spent over and over and over again locally. So that's also huge to the tax base. So to me, it just seems like this is narrowing the participation and not broadening it.
I'll touch on that. You know, on a lot of these projects, it's the usual suspects. And I think, Joe, if you want to speak to that as well, but the city is going out looking for qualified contractors. I don't know, Joe, if you want to speak to how many bids you typically entertain on a project or something like that, and if you feel like the field would be narrowed if an RBO is in place?
I guess one thing that I'll touch on that in just a second. One thing that I was thinking of that kind of differentiates, at least on the engineering and the projects contracts we go for bids on, we kind of have a different classification. We call them proposals and then bids. And proposals are primarily, at least a term that we use, we'll go out and solicit proposals from contractors for like maintenance contracts, sidewalk maintenance, for instance, where, you know, it's not subject necessarily to public works construction bidding, where we have to publicly bid it. And so if we're talking about just projects that we're bidding publicly, you know, with Class 2 notices, those have, you know, the full contract language. All of the specifications are included in them. Bidder proof of responsibility, all of the things that kind of laid out in the referral document. But from time to time, we have had contractors that we've had to disqualify. Usually, we want to do that before we open their bids, rather than having to, you know, see a low number or low bid and then have, you know, additional bite on our hands to say that they were disqualified. That's the pre-qualification is an important aspect, at least for what we've done. But so largely, we're talking the bigger projects anyway. Contractors that are used to, I would assume that we would be applying this primarily to publicly bid contracts, the bigger contracts, ones that need to be publicly bid, that are going to have all of the requirements, things that contractors are used to doing, you know, for any community that they're working for. But I think it may become a little bit of a challenge just to make sure that if a contractor doesn't have one of these items, that you know, we're making sure that we're adjusting our protocol, our checklist, so to speak, to make sure that, all right, they've submitted everything, they're qualified, we're good to go. But you know, there's only a couple other additional items I think that we have to include in our documentation in order to cover that.
Thank you. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Cramer, but I believe every contractor that is currently working on the Wisconsin Rapids Fire Department would qualify under an RBO. Is that safe to say?
The contractors that I know that are on site, correct.
Mr. Bemke.
I think Joe Eichstead might have just answered this question, but these are for projects that are bid only, correct? These casual projects, like I think Joe mentioned sidewalk, those jobs would probably still be available. Smaller jobs would be available to our smaller local contractors, potentially.
You're muted, Joe.
Wait. Apologize for that. So at least if it's a publicly bid project, it has to be at least $25,000. And you know, I would assume that I don't think the model ordinance actually specifies a differentiation between a publicly bid contract and perhaps other maintenance work that may or may not be subject to a publicly bid situation. But I guess if there is a differentiation there, that some of these maintenance contracts are generally smaller contracts, you know, perhaps they could continue to go to smaller contractors. But I guess you know, the model ordinance doesn't differentiate, you know, what type of contract or
We're talking about bid contracts.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, I said usual suspects, so I think of a company like Joslin, local concrete contractor that does a lot of work, a lot of sidewalk work, and that would be a contractor that would be qualified for under the RBO. So again, it's essentially, we're not really changing much. We're just putting it in writing. And now we can hold these contractors accountable. And if we have issues with a contractor on a project and they end up being low on another project, we can make that decision to say, you know, not this time.
I support this. I think, I don't want to put Paul on the spot, but I think we've been through with some of our contractors in the not too distant past that, I mean, this would give us a tool anyway. So, thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I just want to also concur that I do support this ordinance for that reason. You know, we need that tool to be able to maybe say enough is enough and not take the low bidder because they are the low bidder. And that would be the only reason to take that contractor. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll make a motion to approve the responsible bidder ordinance as presented, adding in the sworn statements of proper employee classification, proper workers' compensation insurance coverage for all employees, and proof of professional or trade license required by local law.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take this to vote. All in favor, respond with aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Ayes have it, 2-1. Okay, moving on. Item number 9, review the referral list. Mr. Eichstead.
so item number 3 is we just covered that item, the responsible bidder ordinance. That could probably be removed at this point.
Yes. Are there any other referrals to add to the list? Hearing none. Okay, moving on. Item number 9 or number 10, adjournment. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a motion. I'll second. All in favor, respond with aye.
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 Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you.